total events that we've had. In Q1, we had a total of 71. In Q2, we had a total of 82. And I'll be honest, as I put together this slide, I had a little PTSD after the quarter that we had right here on the board, just because staffing challenges were a challenge in this quarter. A lot of that was carried through, in particular from salary staff, part-time, on-call, and temp work alone. But a lot of our salary staff, as you probably saw, I know you guys attended a couple of the events. You probably saw Pat, myself, the sales team, the events team, everybody out there on the floor making these happen. In particular, this was something that I remember looking at a year prior in the middle of COVID. It was 2020 and kind of going, hey, or 2021, we're a year into the pandemic. What is next spring going to look like in 22? Hey, we'll be able to get there with staffing levels. So we continue to look at this with a, hey, I think we'll be able to be back to where we were hoping to be on a staffing level. We quite weren't there. So we did pinch the staff pretty heavily. And that's why we made some decisions as of recently for the summer, is to kind of start looking at managing the calendar a little differently and going into it with a sense of revenue managing, looking at economic impact, and taking a look at the value of each group, and then assessing it from there, whether we wanted to keep fitting things in there. There's some space on the calendar here and there, but again, turnovers for operations is pinch point for the ops team that has to set up and tear down. Food and beverage coming from breakfast, lunches, and dinners, depending on the day or the time of day. We tended to do okay with a lot of the banquets, but midday lunches and stuff like that, we have still a lot of students on our wait staff. So a lot of all hands on decks through this quarter here in particular. Great revenues. The center did outstanding on the revenue side. We broke some records for one of the months in particular for April. But with that came a whole series of challenges. And I would say, and I remember telling Pat this after I got back from IAVM in Anchorage, that I could see a different look on the team, and I could hear it even when I called and checked in with the team for Anchorage, that they were hitting a breaking point. And that's why when we got back, we quickly kind of assessed the whole situation and started looking at the calendar going, if we continue to say yes to everything, Boise Center is getting a lot of pent up demand because the Northwest, a lot of the venues are closed down. And so there's not an ability to do some of these meetings. And there was 2 years of pent up demand too for some of these groups to meet. It's kind of interesting as you're looking at the attendance numbers. I was looking at them last night, actually just evaluating, preparing for this. And they're kind of all over the board. Some groups went way higher than what they were anticipating, and other groups dropped down in the attendance. And it's usually meetings and conventions that had some travel components were a little bit lower than what we expected, but some of the local banquets, they were wanting to come back in full-fledged and support those organizations in their fundraiser efforts, and it showed through in their numbers that they brought in from fundraising. So again,
to put in perspective, prior to COVID, we had 245 employees. Through BSU graduation, we had 200, and we dropped to 183 after BSU got out because we lost some of the college kids. So we continued to book like we were at 245, but we were serving with 200, and that's why there was one payroll period. The culinary team alone, just culinary, had 347 hours of overtime. That meant that most of the staff had between 25 and 40 hours of overtime in one pay period, which meant that they were here from 6 in the morning until probably 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night sometimes. I walk the kitchens every single day. I do it anyway, but nothing is harder when you're going through and you're patting everybody on the back saying thanks for being vertical. That's hard. Yeah, they got paid overtime. They had great paychecks, and they all had great attitudes. I mean, we didn't lose anybody, right? They all pulled it off. But for 6 weeks, almost 7, very few of the food staff, the management team, supervisor team, and then in the kitchen, the culinary team, hardly any days off. In fact, one of the young culinary guys, I told him, I said, hey, because I have the overtime sheet. I know I sign off on payroll. And it's like, thank you for doing what you're doing. I'm sorry you're having to do it. I'm sorry that you're putting in so much overtime, but your paycheck looks great. And he looked at me and smiled. He goes, it's great, Pat. I don't have anywhere to spend my money because I'm working here all the time. So, he said, I'm saving money. And so again, they had great attitudes. But you want to know some of the hard stuff that goes on, that's it. I mean, when you.
Madam Chair, a couple of questions. What's our average pay for those people?
Well, we just raised, he was gonna talk about this, but we recently made the decision to up our starting wage from 14 to 16. Most of the culinary, I can't just offhand give you an average. Culinary is probably at least $3 an hour more starting. But we have culinarians well into the mid-20s.
I'd say banquet cooks are starting in the mid-18s right now. Prep cooks are that 16 if you're just coming in with no experience in your prep and stuff. But everything else that takes skill is $18 to $20 in the kitchen.
What about servers?
Servers start at 16, but again, based on experience, that's zero experience. So if you've got some experience, the average of a server is probably pulling in about 18 right now on my new scale.
Wages are higher than sorry, Jody. Wages are higher now across the board than I've ever seen.
Pam, do I have that in my packet?
No.
No, I will
Would you
send
send
it
it
to
to
you.
me?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, so that's kind of the part of the challenges that we do face is the staffing. And I have a whole slide that I'll get to at that point where I talk about the metrics that Pat was just referring to about our numbers. And that kind of shows you where we were prior to pandemic and then where we are today and kind of the flux that we've seen. We picked up some additional, but then summer has happened and we lose some of our BSU staff during that time during the summer because they go home or they take on other jobs during the summer. But for the most part, we maintained about 70% of that staff we had prior. So we've hired and we kept ourselves pretty much even from the dispersal of the food and beverage staff that went back to home or from school. We picked up additional. So we're at a break even point. My goal is by September 1 to be back up to 250. And that's we're about 50 short right about now.
So you're 200 again-ish?
Yep. Again, a lot of those numbers, I think I'm at 185 today, but I've got offer letter 3 that I signed just offer letters for key positions and also several more that we're interviewing in the staff. So we'll be above 190 by the end of this week for sure.
So did I hear you say you're not taking new events or you're?
We're evaluating it case by case. So we haven't put, I mean, for the most part, the fall is full. It's booked unless there's another window, which I don't know where it exists. October 31st is one of them. That's on Halloween. Very few windows here and there in the fall. For the bookings, we're pretty much booked out from that side. It's the summer that we do have some availability and we're looking at it from a capital project standpoint. We've got air walls being replaced and other stuff. We're pinching the staff down onto those for meetings or what I would call more like the dance groups where we just pick up room rent, but not a lot of food and beverage or revenue are the ones that we're tending to turn away right now because we're going, hey, let's revenue manage the calendar and also use the staff in the appropriate way. And getting the staff prepped up for a fall again. We've got a lot of new people that we need to train and make sure our quality of services are maintained. So that's a big part of this as well as we just didn't want to get ourselves too far to what I just experienced in this quarter in particular, Q2, is something I don't want to do to our team again because our team was resilient and they survived it. But I think there's one individual that I'm not sure if this had anything to do with, but we lost an operations manager during the time. Not anything more than they had another great opportunity ahead of them. But part of me went through my head of going, they went through this quarter and then shortly after they'd been here 14 years, they put in looking elsewhere. So part of the industry, and I learned that, and I'll speak to that on one of my slides too, is when I went to IBM, there's just a lot of people that have been in the industry for a long time. COVID either made them rethink about what industry that they're currently in, or they're evaluating the role that they're in within that industry based on the demand it has from, I don't like the word work-life balance. I've changed it to work-life integration for the hospitality industry because balance isn't exactly something that you get when your life is dictated by the event calendar. So we've had to really support work-life integration is what we call it. Where, hey, when you got to take care of something, go take care of your family. But the responsibilities of the job are here, whether you're here or not for the most part, and they can be done at different times. So we're trying to be as flexible for those that can work in that environment.
So if you were able to hire more staff through the summer, would you add more events or is it still just because of capital projects you would not?
If we had the staff levels, I'd probably continue to take on a few little events here and there. But due to capital projects, there are some in August that we just wouldn't even be able to. July and August, actually, we have some pretty decent conventions. I'll highlight those as we go through. But July, we've got 4 weeks of conventions where they take up that kind of middle. It would be interesting to see if there was a Friday or a Saturday, a banquet would be something that I would be very interested in picking up additional because that's good revenue. It's going to put a lot of the staff to work in particular. Like I said, the short-term bookings that we're getting inquiries on a lot of times are dance groups, stuff that just doesn't have the same level of revenue where they just want to come in and have a meeting or use their room, but not really use any of their additional services. So no AV, no food and beverage, which is where make a large portion of our revenue.
And you may
Big
be
bank.
touching upon it, but like I'm assuming you're continuing to recruit.
Oh, yes, and I'll have a whole slide on that, so I'll get to recruiting and staffing here shortly that you guys will be able to ask a lot of questions on. But again, that's just a highlight, but like I said, I kind of relived this, and most of us that were in the salary positions worked 6 and 7 days a week during these times here to support this, so our staff did an outstanding job of maintaining our level of service throughout that. Q3 looks a little different, so I've got a total of 41 events versus my 82. But again, I think we did a great job of revenue managing the calendar here for the different number of events. As you can see, the types of events that are in June, types that are in July and August, conventions in July and August. In June, we still have some good food and beverage to pick up. We already did do St. Luke's Kid for a night. But again, you can kind of see the mix versus what the last quarter looked like and how summers tend to be a little slower. This is a very busy summer for us, still even on the books currently, historically, to what we've been able to book. I think a lot of that's that compression on the fall dates, and on the spring dates, people are now starting to look at a July and August that never would have prior. Some of them like IASA are going to look at August just because of the timing as they're heading to school. But
Oh, I can't believe Bora's reunion has 300 people. In my class, we got like 100. I'm amazed.
yes, there's a few. Actually, Mountain View was the 2012 reunion. I thought, okay, that's only the 10-year, but the 31st, they didn't have their year in the system. So it says the 31st. So I'm not sure what year that would have been. I'm going to do some math here and figure that out. But I guess I was curious if that's when Bora started or not. So.
No,
It's
because they had the pandemic, they didn't have to hold it last year.
Okay, that makes sense. Any questions on this slide here? This is kind of just a highlight, but if you have questions about any acronyms or what they are or who they are, I should be able to for the most part. Okay. Operational updates real quick. We talked about staffing. Staffing for operations right now continues to be a challenge. In particular, the nature of the job itself is a little bit more demand on the physical side. You're setting up and tearing down for chairs. We did lose an operations manager, as I spoke about. That was Jennifer Orr. She's had a marketing degree and she's been here for 14 years. She's had a marketing degree for about 12 of the 14. I helped develop her myself in operations as the operations manager, and she's been in that position for many, many years now. So that was an interesting opportunity that she had. She's kept it for the most part private of where she went. I think a select few of us know, but I'm not going to say publicly on that side, just because she's putting a lot of pressure on herself heading into a new role. It's using marketing that she's never done, so she asked for some privacy in that. But it's a big change for the department, and it's caused a little bit of a, hey, what's going on? Who's our manager going to be? Well, I have good news that we have already hired Tyler Shadow. He comes to us from California and Arizona, but he has a very robust background in food and beverage and in operations, both from the hospitality industry. He's actually been the general manager of the Regala Group, which is they're doing business as the Havana Kitchen out of Temecula, California, if I pronounced that correctly. And then he's been out of Tuscaloosa, Arizona, as well, from an event operations supervisor, theater manager, food and beverage venues manager. He actually worked for SMG, or now it's ASM Global, but formerly SMG. A lot of background in the hospitality industry. I can tell you my impression just within the first 20 minutes of the interview, I was pretty impressed, and that's pretty hard for me on a leadership thing to give me that level of confidence for somebody. But it was really when we put him in front of the rest of the team, we had him interview with the rest of the ops staff, AV team, and others that he may be leading. And we gave him, hey, ask him some questions. And it was about 3 or 4 questions. And they said his answers were so robust and so thorough, they didn't have anything else to ask him, and they were left rendered speechless, is what my HR director told me. So the individual is super impactful, I think, to the team, or will be super impactful from a leadership standpoint, and somebody that I think right now is what the team needs, is somebody that can kind of take on the culture that we've already created here, pick up the ball from that, but also create his own niche as far as the way he is about leadership. Just one of those guys that leads by example. It's not a do as I say and not as I do. He's the lead by example type of individual. And he understands the industry to the point where he didn't come across as somebody that would lead from, like I said, from a desk. It's more operations is hands-on. You got to get out there and work with the team, see what they're doing. So I think this individual is going to do a great job.
So question about higher level positions like this, do you headhunt? You said
We
California.
put it out on
Arizona.
IAVM, so we did. So
Okay.
I don't know if headhunt is as strong as I'd put it out there. So we don't go out to a national search by any means, but we use the resources we have available within the industry to make it as big of a ripple effect as we can to market to it. IAVM is probably our best avenue for that. And then using all of our other means that we've used for marketing jobs, but we don't.
So did he move here for that position?
He already was in Boise.
Okay.
The part that probably impressed me the most about the individual is he had us on his radar to cost potential places to work. He's from the hospitality industry. So when he got here, he went and worked for 2 places, kind of as a secret shopper. We used, I'm not sure if you guys heard me talk about Bacon for temp agencies. He went on Bacon and worked a shift here under Bacon, not telling anybody that he was interested in this position, and just to see how it was. He was so impressed by what he saw on the team that led him is the team that he's going to manage now, ironically. Had very positive things to say about the supervisors and the employees that helped onboard him on his 1 day as a temp worker. So I'm very impressed with this individual.
So do you find anybody that you have to help move here? From
No,
elsewhere?
not yet. There was
Because if
the other number 2 candidate was actually in the process of moving here as well from California. So a lot of people already had plans that were popping up. This individual didn't get the position, but still wants to work here so much based on the culture. And he said from the moment that he talked to Megan, our HR specialist, she's like, this is where I want to be. We're trying to look into an operations supervisor role. I'm a little afraid that he might be overqualified for that, but the other number 2 candidate wants to work here as well and is willing to take a lower position. They both didn't require any reload package or anything on that
you
nature.
offer that, if they do need it.
I'm gonna jump in just in the essence of time.
Yeah.
Unless it's an executive level position at least in the past, we've never considered reload
Okay.
packages unless it's executive level or at least at that level. May change based on market conditions,
Yeah.
but
Certain positions, if I felt like we needed to go to bat, I would have gone to Pat and asked for that, but
Yeah.
that historically has not been the case. And we didn't luckily need to do it for that individual. I think I spoke about this one last quarter too, because he had just been promoted, but Matt Williams was our event coordinator, was promoted to an event manager. That gets us back up to our full staffing levels where we were pre-pandemic with the total number of event managers that we have back in the hallway. And with that, it created a vacancy in the event coordinator role. So we promoted Mia O'Leary from banquet captain to event coordinator. I love what I see the internal promotion, but what it does, it's kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul, as you can imagine. So we're now looking for a captain. We've promoted some individuals, but we're out there continuing to look for those positions as we continue to promote from within.
Mia was a recent BSU grad. She'd been with us for at least 2 years, maybe 3.
Almost 3, yeah.
While she went to school, but then she graduated. And like where the opportunities were available, so she came full-time as a BSU grad.
And Nick Shoba and Stacey Adams both just got back from IAVM. One attended the IAVM GI program, which is the 3rd year for venue management school. It's Graduate Institute is what GI stands for. And it's really another level of venue management school for individuals that are operating a venue. So for Nick, who's overseeing our capital budget stuff on the operational side, and then overseeing the operations AV teams, he got a lot out of it and said it was extremely valuable. Same thing with Stacey Adams. She attended year 1 of venue management school. It's something I've been through for 2 years. Several of us have been through it as well. It's a 2-year certification, 1 week of classes, each year, and you go for 2 years, and then you take a test and you get certified at that point. Continuing to hire and train operations staff and supervisors, I would say this is probably one of my biggest areas of focus right now, along with the food and beverage wait staff. That's a whole different nature, but finding people to come into the operations staff that are qualified for supervisors has been an ongoing challenge and continues to be an ongoing challenge. Something that I'm working with very closely with Nick, and I've got some ideas on my staff sheet I'll get to, so I should have be able to answer some questions if you have them regarding that. AV IT updates, just some continued notes.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to comment that I attended one of those 71 events, about 500 people, I think. And I was over the top impressed as I came into the dining room there in the middle, bussing tables, mask, gloves, Cody, and a full rack of dishes and whatnot. I don't know how you guys do that, but I am
Experience.
thrilled to see a top manager on the floor like that.
And honestly, it's something that.
And I went to get a drink and our bar manager was slinging drinks.
There you go. Honestly, that's not totally unheard of even during a normal weekday or weekend even. It's just the amount of time that we had to be in. You probably saw us more than normal, but honestly, we lead by example here. That's part of our culture. So I appreciate the recognition, but there was not just me out there. I can say that most of the people in this room were in there. I remember Anne-Marie on one of the events, she was stuck in the middle of the room and I didn't think I'd ever get her out of the middle of the room because she was clearing tables at a rate that I'm like, okay, we need to free her up because she has not left this small quadrant of tables for so long. So Again, AV and IT continues to knock it out of the park. AV in particular, the revenues continue to be very strong. They're breaking records for certain months, in particular, April is another one of those. That team is staying really strong. We've got about 15 technicians. We've had turnover in that department at our AV coordinator role. So we're currently looking at promoting or hiring from the outside for the AV coordinator. We also have an AV manager that's starting to get closer to retirement and has voiced that and saying that he's getting closer and closer. So we're continuing to look at succession planning for that department as well, because that's turned into $1 million revenue, at least in revenue a year for that department. We're upgrading our phone system. So Tony, our IT manager, is leading the project on that. What that is kind of we use what's called an Avaya phone system, which has some ability to do what a digital phone system can do. Or an IP phone system is probably a better word for it, can do. With this new one, it allows us to be more robust for the environment we're working in. Some people are kind of remote, or the ability that, hey, I can take my cell phone, and right now the way that the old phone was, it just didn't have the features to caller ID and things like that. I could just see it was my desk calling me, but I didn't know who. Vice versa, if I called out from my cell phone and it was paired to my desk phone, a lot of those features will go away and be more robust going forward. We're upgrading our wireless infrastructure, so that's going to happen as well. On the facility side, several large capital projects, but probably the biggest is our air wall replacement in room 110, scheduled for August. A lot of other warehouse upgrades, water pumps, gas lines, things like that are also inside of those capital projects as well for Q3 and Q4. We are starting to work on budgets for the 2023 year. So next month is the beginning of that process. Every department, I continue to work with them as best as possible to continuing to manage higher labor costs. But again, getting our staff in and protecting our service quality has been our first focus, and making sure that the clients don't see anything from the staffing levels. So again, we continue to do what we need to do, is using bacon and also pulling from exempt staff as needed. As I highlighted there, use salary and temp labor to fill gaps on large events. And then just Grove Plaza, the Alive at 5 returned last week to 4,000 people out on the plaza. So good turnout for their first time back since the pandemic. And they're not every week, but they're coming up again this Wednesday, and then they have a break the following Wednesday. So they're almost every other week, with a couple weeks here and there in a row. I think it's based on some concert series that are going on, as well as just their ability to make that happen right now with the staff that they have. That I'll move on to food and beverage updates and try to move through this quickly. Q2 was extremely busy, but a huge success for our culinary team and food and beverage teams. I spoke about this already. All hands and cross-departmental support carried us through the spring budgets. Food and beverage will start the 2023 budgeting process as well next month. We're continuing to manage higher food costs and labor. One thing that I know Pat has challenged myself on, and I'm working with Chris Lochner on, is looking at a potential 30-day pricing lock for some of our menu selections. In particular, right now, we've got groups asking to go to contract and lock in their food pricing 12 months in, because they can see what's happening. Obviously, that's not realistic. So what I need to do, because I also help plan for an association as well and know how to budget for one of those, it's tough when you get told by a facility that, hey, you can't plan on any budget for your food. So we're coming up with some menu selection items that I think we can lock in at a 90-day to give them something at a budget. But other than that, if they're wanting beef or some of these things that have a little more volatility to them, we are going to have to lock them into a 30-day pricing for some of that stuff. We've updated some of our policies to protect our service quality and availability, such as cancellation dates falling more in line with when we collect payments. So again, we continue to see where we can gain some additional advantages in that area. On the staffing, we continue to promote. So 2 people within the culinary team, Damon Baugh, to executive sous chef, came out of one of our banquet chefs or banquet cooks. Promoted Christopher Olofsson to sous chef, and he was one of our leads inside the kitchen as well. So Damon brings a wealth of experience to the team. Christopher's been here for a long time, I think probably 6 or 7 years at this point in time, very well respected within the kitchen. And again, as I spoke about here, we're continuing to limit our large food and beverage services through the fall until staffing goals are met. Food and beverage is looking to hire 41 banquet servers before September. So like I said, out of my 50, 41 of them are banquet servers, and about 9 are operations full-time staff, is where our pinch points lie right now. One of the ways that we balanced that was we raised the base rate of pay for entry-level positions to $16 an hour, was formerly $14. And then we'll be using a combination of efforts to reach the goal with potential recruiting bonuses, hiring incentives. We historically pick up some students from BSU, but where we're going to go is last year we did some of these incentives and hiring bonuses, and they worked, but they didn't work as targeted as I'd like them to be. So we're going to be a little more specific to what dates, if you work these 3 dates on, then you get the hiring bonus, versus just you can work 2 or 3 shifts. And then kind of what I'm hearing that people are doing at Amazon is they're working till they get the $1,000 bonus that they give, and then they check out on them. So we're trying to avoid some of those behaviors with our plans here.
One of the things Cody wasn't aware of, because I had the meeting right before this, but I sat down with 7 of our service staff and just asked them, how do we get more of you? You know, they love working here. Like how do, in half of them were BSU students. One of them just graduated from high school. In fact, she has just referred six of her friends and friends of friends for servers that are high school kids, which is great. So anyway, one of the things that came out of, we've been looking at these incentives, like you said, and you know, work 90 days or 30 days, work specific events. The suggestion from the employees was put an hour commitment on it. Don't put a timeline on it. You get your incentive after you work whatever the number of hours, 60, 100, 1,000. They wouldn't let me go to 1,000. But it came from the service staff in that meeting. It's just me and them. It's really fun. Those are fun meetings to have with the team. So anyway, he wasn't aware of that, but they say go hours.
That's good feedback. I did the same thing with our operations team, and they thought of things like, hey, food incentives or parking credits, anything that they could do. The team is very much giving us feedback, because that was our question to them. And I think you asked the same question I did, which is, how do I get more of you guys to come work for us? And they gave us, a lot of them are creative. Some of them are kind of wild and out there, pools on the rooftop and things like that. And I'm like, I can't do that. But
TikTok videos.
we did build a pool. I told them, I said, we have a pool now, but I don't know. There has been that joke for many years ongoing. Just highlight a couple of the events that just.
What do you do for uniforms? Do they have to purchase their own uniform shirts, or those provided?
Those are provided currently for them. That used to be something that we did have, but we've changed that since, because of the current market right now is putting additional things onto people that might change them wanting to come work for us. So parking is, we split the cost of parking for part-time, full-time, it's covered, but actually still pay for a portion of it as well. But that was what we opened up to for our part-time. You don't even have to be covered under the benefits package in order to get the parking benefit now. So
It's a 50-50 for hourly.
so we pay 50%, and they pay the 50% of it. Just a couple highlights that aren't on the slide here, but College of Idaho, we did about 30,000 in food and beverage. Realtors Gala, about 50,000 in food and beverage. Yellow Ribbon event was a multi-day event, 67,000 in food and beverage. Wild Sheep, 33,000. Boys and Girls, 36,000. This isn't even bar sales. These are just food and beverage, just food for the most part. Some of it the cash bars aren't included into this or any of that. It's the stuff that was hosted is included in these numbers. Boys and Girls Club, 36,000, Jade and DeLuca, 40,000. And those were all weekend after weekend after weekend after weekend. It was every Friday and Saturday for 4 to 5 weeks were these events. So the team did a great job of generating some large revenue and did a good job of maintaining our service quality. This is the slide I was talking about that I get into my staffing here. So Q1, we were sitting at 165. We staffed up to Q2. Again, Q3, this number is actually a little higher. I just met with Stacy prior, so I need to update my slide because we've hired additional people. We're about the 190 by the time I get to all of the updated stuff. This was all the way back into April when the Q3 I was running the very end of April. So we've added some additional positions. We attended several job fairs over the last quarter. We're working all angles on opportunities to recruit and retain. As I talked about, the base pay went up. We are doing continued professional development opportunities through Ameriben. We offer about 7 to 8 different trainings for our leadership, as well as we're opening some of those up to all of our staff. And it's additional training to kind of make another benefit to them as far as working here at Boise Center. And then I attended myself a meeting at Boise State for their restaurant operations, hospitality, resort operations and hospitality management certificate. It's interesting. It's a cool program that they have going on for people that are wanting to get into hospitality maybe a little earlier or go to BSU to receive a certification. It's just not the level of employee that we're struggling with bringing in. So for me, it's a great way to kind of pay attention to this. And I think there's a potential to get additional staff in the future. It's not going to solve my goal there, my gap of 50 to 60 employees. So with that, the last two here, Boise Center all staff meeting for Maple, I just highlighted that. We did a very good all staff where we had everybody on board at the time show up to our all staff meeting. And we did a really cool activity from beginning to end where we showed our staff how the marketing process works, how the sales process works, how the contracting process works, how operations, food and beverage, all the way to finance at the very end flows through our business. And they put together these events and it was very well received. I heard great comments from the staff overall that they learned things about their counterparts on one side or the other of the business that they maybe didn't know prior. And then we had to cancel our all employee party back in the middle of another COVID spike during the fall or winter season. So we've rescheduled it for August 27th. And we're gonna have our
Madam Chair, what's the format of that,
of
the employee party?
it's we're doing a game night theme. So normally we do it kind of it's on site here. So we use our space. And then we do something real easy from food and beverage side. So we're doing what we call game night theme, where it's gonna be bringing your favorite sports team gear, bring in your favorite board game if you'd like. And it's very much gonna be nachos and hot dogs and brats and stuff that you would do at a game night. That's easy to prep the day before. And then we usually pay somebody that's a culinarian that's worked on our culinary team that either works somewhere else. We'll have them come in and work the kitchen to give our team a break as much as possible. Several of the staff work that event still too to make it happen here locally. That's been the format historically.
Thank you.
I have some good news. I don't want to share it yet, but next quarter, I have some really exciting news that we won an award, but I've got to go. I can't go public with it yet. We won another award. So. As far as organizational updates, my last slide here, and I'll get off the podium here. We're working, as I spoke about, strategic planning continues to be an ongoing discussion. I think Pat will be bringing up some of that, continuing to manage the calendar with events and sales team. It's kind of a whole group gets together and we look at inquiries as they come in and we evaluate them based on revenue. What are the dates? We work with operations, AV, and food and beverage to say, hey, if we were to add this onto the calendar, are you guys comfortable based on your current staffing levels? So it's a decision by committee right now. And that's how we're moving forward as Pat says, we're navigating a lot of waters where there's a lot of fog and we don't know where the rocks are. So we're using the team to help navigate that as a decision point as a group. Succession planning, something that I spoke to last time and continues to be part of our plan as we move forward. And I've got some positions that I'm working on that process with, in particular operations, because our operations manager, we did lose that. And then we're continuing to limit the sizes of banquets until staffing levels are protected. Right now through the fall, we're saying at 800. If I get my 240 to 250 number met, that number then goes up. And so I would then reach out to those clients that we've kind of put that cap limit on and said, I'm hitting the number I wanted to hit. You guys can start looking at selling more. So I can picture by those September ones might be a little bit of a struggle because they're not going to know until probably early September. But anything in October, November, we're hoping that if our staffing plans work, we'll be able to bump those attendances up. And also same thing for the spring and the further out. I attended the Chamber Leadership Conference. I know that several others were there as well. Through April 10th through the 12th, theme was regionality. Not a lot of takeaways. I actually took a little bit more away from the prior one, but overall it was a good conference and good networking conference to learn about what the community is doing from a regionality standpoint. And always interesting hearing from the governor, the mayors, everything from that side. So, and then I attended IAVM Region 4 conference held May 2nd through the 4th in Anchorage, Alaska. I spoke about that a little bit, or I know Pat has on the previous ones. We are probably 2-3 months, if not a year ahead of some of the other markets right now as far as coming back. Spokane's we're doing 350, 400 person events. And as you saw, I was telling them I was going back to our building to continue to work thousands, 800, those type of sizes of events, and their jaws about hit the ground. And then I plan on also attending IBM Venue Connect in Phoenix, and it's going to be July 18th through the 20th. So it'll be pretty warm in Phoenix during that time. So I'm getting prepped for that. And then it's not on this slide, but I did just sign up for, with Pat's support, to go to Connect VizBash with Kay and the sales team. And it's August 8th through the 10th. This will be my first kind of travel with the sales team where I'm going to work the booth and go to some appointments with them to kind of see that side of the business a little bit more. That'll answer any questions.
Any questions? Thanks, Cody.
Thank you.
We'll give you the cliff notes, which is appropriate.
Do you want to have Mary Michael sort of join you? Because
Yep, we're gonna.
there's going to have to be a little faster.
Sorry, I'm stuck in a chair.
So for the marketing update, we'll just take a quick look back and a quick look forward. Last work session, we did present our new creative and showed you what it looked like. We're now in the process of rolling that out. So our trade publications are now seeing that. This is our industry publication look. And this is some of our new photography that we have done as well. You have since, you've phased out Nick and Ally. So we thank them for their service. This is a sample of a local ad. We're not using the same centered around June concept locally, but we want to give people an idea of things they can do here. So meet here, train here, motivate here, celebrate here is kind of the theme. We'll be carrying that through some of the digital media as well. This is what our digital looks like as far as like banner ads. You can see still the same concepts, the same colors, but we'll rotate the photography. We did bring in several models to shoot here at Boise Center, so we're using our backdrops and our locations, just so that we have a sense we're not using staff. You know, it has a longer shelf life to be able to use. Once again, when the digital changes size and formats, this is just showing that creative in a new template. We're getting quite a bit of media exposure in this next quarter, which is exciting. We continually want to tell our stories. When we're placing our advertising, we still want to make sure we're telling our story, so that we're doing interviews, showing photographs, highlighting different things through different publications. So this is just a quick snapshot of the different publications that we'll be in and some of the features that they'll be covering. So, for example, the Idaho Travel Guide, that's an annual thing. We always participate in that on an annual basis. The Boise Valley Spotlight is the Chamber's publication. But the industry publications, we always want to make sure we're there, and it's especially great when we have an Idaho feature or they're featuring the Pacific Northwest. Some of our current projects, I just wanted to touch on this because we are helping HR. We are helping the Human Resources Department, and using this tool, we're going to be refreshing their page on the website. Bring some new life to it, some new colors, some new design. We'll be adding a new, what we call the HR recruitment video. So it's a very short video, just a minute or slightly over a minute, to be able to highlight what it is like to work here. So these are just a couple of frame shots from that video that we shot here. We worked with Drake Cooper on this, and it does follow the Wowgistics theme of the culture that's here. And so we did, once again, bring in some models, so we weren't using staff, so that it has a longer shelf life. And we don't have to edit it every time someone departs for a better opportunity. But we are showing the operations, the kitchen, the different departments, showing staff or models working in the environment where these positions are taking place. So we'll look forward to launching that. We're about 2 weeks out from finishing the video and refreshing that web page. And so basically it's a new tool, new resources, trying to help, once again, create exposure, create visibility, and create interest in working here. A couple of other projects. Most of our projects with Drake Cooper are the video projects. We're getting, like I say, we're checking off the HR video here very quick. Working on our sales video script at the current time, and the other videos are the highlight videos that will be on the websites and on the video walls. We're doing with Warren Lassen, we're updating our sales proposal. That's the proposal that's generated out of Ungerloch with the sales team, doing some refreshing there, changing photography and adding some different text points and copy points. We're also working with Warren on designing a few things based on the Ward Hooper artwork, and I've shared that in previous work sessions as well. We had Ward Hooper design 3 pieces of artwork for us. Now, rather than it just being a backdrop, we're bringing it to life in other forms, whether it's promotional giveaways or printed materials. So we are kind of having some fun with that, with those pieces of art to help promote Boise when we're on the road. Upcoming activities, we're going to be at the Chamber Golf Tournament this year. Obviously, we participate with the Chamber Business After Hours. We do 4 of those a year, and just really try to take advantage of all the networking opportunities that are out there and exist for us. That's quick.
I think in the essence of time, is it all right if I click through to what I think is the meat of the slides? Okay. Go back this one because I think this is interesting. This is an editorial article where I was contacted by a writer with Smart Meetings, and the article is out just in June, and it was about convention centers, trends and technology and different things, and Cody hit on a little bit of this, but the writer asked if we could connect them with a recent client contact that could speak to their experience. And so we provided the name of Julie Weller, who's with Northwest Lineman College, and she had planned their recent February 300-person convention. So all 3 of their locations came together for big staff training and conference. And The quote is, ultimately, Weller chose Boise Center for her group's event, a 3-day conference for 300 people, for features like dividable spaces for breakout sessions, pre-installed cameras for live streaming to remote attendees, plates and cutlery, a nod to the green, to reduce paper and plastic waste, strong but flexible COVID protocols, and most of all, the upbeat service-focused culture of the staff. So, and there's some nice imagery, several quotes of Boise Center in that article, and it also has the Austin Convention Center and Washington State Convention Center, so we're right in there. Our reaccreditation of the GBAC was picked up by Facilities and Destinations. That's a nice media placement. Okay. So clicking ahead here, or moving ahead, fast forwarding, in our marketing media mix, we do traditional advertising, print, and then we do digital marketing. Our digital really does the heavy lift of generating website traffic and generating inquiries or leads for both short-term and long-term business. This is a new tactic we're trying in 2022, and we're having good success, and that is native ads. And native ads are meant to look like they're placed in articles, and they're
Madam
meant
Chair.
to not disrupt you, just look like the
Mary
article
Michael.
itself.
Could you go back one slide?
Sure, be happy to.
Of those 755 clicks,
Isn't that pretty?
can you measure how many people become customers?
I don't know that I can measure how many become customers at this level. I can measure what pages they're going to, and I can measure what sites they were on prior to, and I can tell you that our inquiries and our leads are up well over what they were last year at this time. Part of that is, as a local economy and national economy, the whole country is much more in a COVID recovery point than we were last year, where it was only in May that we could book events for 50 and above, or have 50 and above. So it's a different playing field. The impressions here, so native ads are meant to create awareness. So they're at the very top of the sales funnel. They're not down here in the bottom where you're really qualifying and having them complete that. This is all about awareness. And then it builds a bigger pool for us to then serve another ad to get them to take action.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Good question. So this is an example of what a native ad looks like. And then overall, quickly, our biggest workhorse is SEM, and that's search engine marketing, SEM media paid ads. This is where we see the most conversions, and those are people coming to the website, filling out an event inquiry, watching a video, or downloading a resource. And it's continuing to be our workhorse this year. We made some changes this year, and you're going to see some significant numbers change by Q3 and Q4, and that's because last year we saw the most action, the most conversions, leads submitted in Q2 and Q3. So as you become more learned in your advertising and digital marketing, when you see that shift, you can say, let's take the bulk of our spending and really weight it into that Q2 and Q3. Let's still be active in Q1, but let's not spend as much during that time. So that's what we did this year. So we should see some changes leading into the next quarter. Our website volume traffic is significantly up 2022 over 2021. Part of that is, I think, the economic environment. People are shopping and they're planning further in advance. We know our inquiries are up. Our page views, so the number of pages they go to during a session, is up. What I think is interesting, you remember that the Convention Center and the Boise CVB have a joint meetings recovery campaign that's funded by the district. And Orange 142, who's the digital agency who runs those, does monthly or almost monthly e-blasts, and they're sent in the past, in February, March, and April, they were sent to 23,000 people combined. So we're seeing our website traffic increased, but you're also seeing our advertising and then these Orange 142 e-blasts that have Boise Center content and a link to our site. And I can track back that traffic because there's a Google Tag Manager on there that tells me it's the Orange 142 emails that are driving that traffic. So it's interesting to see exactly where that fishing line, where that fish is pulling it in from. That's new this year, so I wanted to point that out to you, and we consider that a good success. And finally, to wrap up, our traffic geographic locations. The biggest change here is that Seattle has bumped up in the top 5. It didn't used to be in the top 5, so we're seeing traffic from Seattle. Boise, Nampa, the Treasure Valley is very consistent, Meridian very consistent with last year. There are no changes in the state demographics that I think are significant at this point, but the city is definitely Seattle. And when Ally is back, she's at a meetings professionals international marketplace this week with the CBB. I'll talk with her about this Seattle and what might be changing, rocking and rolling, and still with our event team who books the short-term business to see the changes. So I'm pleased so far, but we're still early in June, so we'll look forward to reporting back more in September.
I was just gonna ask you about this. So is this just website traffic or is it all digital?
Website
advertising.
traffic, just traffic.
Do you have, does this mirror what all digital
You know, I had it.
ads are?
I'd have to go, if that would be traffic by source, and I can pull that and see the digital. Let me write myself a note. It's crazy how much the footprint on digital where you can track and create manually. So sources,
Just randomly, given that Meridian's actually bigger than Nampa, and there are twice as many impressions from,
I know, isn't that
Nampa?
interesting? I can tell you part of this, we're a little bit skewed here because in the first quarter, we did boosted social media posts for the job fair and for the Butte and Boise event, and those only ran locally. And meaning in the Boise metro area, which is Boise, Meridian, Nampa, Caldwell. So that could be skewing the Nampa and Meridian numbers a little bit, depending on who saw those job fair ads and clicked on them. That's the only thing. And then a year ago, we were mostly doing local advertising digitally until about early May, because that's all we could do was that. There were very few people traveling pre-vaccine, which seems like a long time ago now, so. Finally, what I think wanted to mention to you, in working with the CVB and Orange 142, we're exchanging information back and forth. The Orange 142 team, we've met together with Drake Cooper and exchanged some of this digital intel, and it's, for lack of a better word, it's very numbers oriented, very data specific, but the two teams have talked and we've taken some portions from them, learned from them, and they've done the same with us. We changed our targeting this year. We changed some of our keywords and we added something called segmenting, which is really interesting. So instead of just targeting people shopping for shoes by serving them shoe ads, we're targeting people who have search behaviors in certain segments, and those are things like corporate meetings, workshops. These are just examples. There's certain words and keywords and segments that those people in those segments have behaviors where they search for destinations and meetings and conventions. And believe it or not, home and gardens and cooking and different things, these behaviors lend to people in these certain segments who also source meetings and conventions, destinations. And that's what I mean, it's like, you really can really dig deep. So that's all. I will tell you that technology, I did an interview with that Smart Meetings, and one of our audiovisual managers said, Mary Michael, the technology is the single biggest game changer in the event industry. And I think what I learned is that any event that happened in 2021 or didn't happen for that event, they want to outdo themselves this year and spend more on their event production, more on their staging, more on that in-person experience, because they really want to wow people coming back to in-person. So it's, and the technology that we've invested in on the AV side, when we talk about it to people we're doing interviews with, is phenomenal. We're right there with all the bigger convention centers. So I can tell tell you that it's, when we're touting that, I know that that also is a human component of the training and the work that goes behind that, because that doesn't happen easily, so. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. Thank you very much.
Nice job, you guys.
Thank you.
Straight up to 2:00.
I know. Adjourn the work session.
Can I